Hey, Len Erickson here with another purveyor of Lightroom tip. Today we're going to cover a nice easy one actually. Literally takes minutes to accomplish. We're going to go ahead and create HDR photos within Lightroom using no other plugins or no other applications involved. So a lot of people for those that are not familiar with HDR, HDR stands for high dynamic range. And think of that as the number of shades or luminous, how many zones of light there are, and the detail. The human eye can see so many levels of dynamic range, and our cameras just can't capture all that in one shot. As we're looking here, we can see on this picture here of the St. Louis Arch, excuse me, that, we have dark shadows, we have parts that are properly exposed, we have parts of this thing that are, the fountain here are underexposed, the details are lost in the fountain. We're muddy over in the corners here. This building is almost non-visible. The arch itself, which is the centerpiece of the actual shot, is only partially illuminated. So the camera just couldn't capture everything in a normal exposure that it needed to complete the photo. So that's where taking multiple exposure shots coming in and then combining them together to create an HDR photo. Now, I'm sure you guys have all seen the over-the-top HDR photos that take things way too far. I'll give you an example here. Here's an example of a HDR that was taken to the point of almost being a cartoon. Everything, it doesn't look real at all. Like I said, it leans more to an illustration or a cartoon than actually a photograph. And that's my opinion. I mean, some people really love the HDR look. What I'm going to show you today is actually a toned down, almost like multiple exposure stacking routine. Lightroom's very well behaved on how it will combine images of multiple exposures together, tone them, and then put them into a final image for us to do the edits. And it's extremely easy. And so that's why I like to teach this to people, because think of it like an entry gateway drug to get started in HDR. Okay, now there are other programs out there that do HDR much better than Lightroom does. I would be the first one to admit that. So this is a good place to get started. And when you see how easy it is, you'll be able to just simply go ahead and experiment. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started here, and I'll explain what we're going on. Here I've got 5 shots of different exposures. Okay, I have +2, +3, the regular exposure, the underexposed, 2 stops underexposed. So a total of 5 images, which is pretty standard for bracketing. Okay, so you'll notice that each image has certain things that it brings to the photo. Like if we take this first one here, we look at it and go in, and you can see that this illuminates the buildings and the details of the buildings that we couldn't see. It illuminates the parts of the fountain that we couldn't see. Of course, it overexposes parts of the photo, but again, we actually can see there's actual clouds in the sky. Okay, going through the exposures, we can see that we're building detail in the shadows. Okay, so what HDR is going to do, it's going to turn around and take these multiple photos, 5 different exposures, and put them together. Okay, so if you ever want to try this, the first thing you do is you're going to need a tripod, set up the camera, put it in position, and then shoot it. A normal exposure, then shoot it 2 stops underexposed, then 1 stop underexposed, then 1 stop overexposed, and then 2 stops overexposed. So that'll give you a total of 5 shots. And a lot of the cameras today have this function built in automatically, where you just say, give me a multiple exposure, and it will then turn around and just do the 5 shots automatically, so you don't even have to touch the settings of the camera. So again, you can always do it manually if needed. But let me show you how quick and easy it is in Lightroom to do the HDR. So I'm going to select the images that I have here, and I'm going to select all 5 images. Okay, so now I have the 5 images that I'm going to use for the HDR. And now I'm just going to simply right click, and then I'm going to come in here and see Photo Merge HDR. Now Lightroom is taking those 5 images and combining them, and that quickly we now have a combined image. And if you can already see the effect, that we can now see all buildings, we can see the arch is well illuminated, we can see the details in the fountain. But we're not done. Okay, we're just starting. So I have checked auto align. That's to make sure all the 5 pictures are aligned perfectly. And then auto tone. And Lightroom is taking all the technical details out of it for you, and it automatically auto tones everything. This ghosting here amount is if you had taken pictures that would say have people in it, or movement of something. Maybe the really windy and the trees were moving. Okay, if there was any movement in the picture, you want to do a deghosting, and then you have a choice of low, medium, or high. But in this case, we're looking at a static landscape, so we don't need any ghosting. So I'm going to leave it at none, and then I'm going to go ahead and hit merge. Lightroom's going to go ahead and do his little thing and combine these 3 images. It's going to make a new image here of the combined, and it's going to be called a HDR. So let's go ahead and take a look at this and see what it's done. Now, without doing anything at all, Lightroom did a pretty decent job of taking those 5 exposures and putting them together for us. So now what do? Well, we just go ahead and edit this photo as we normally would any other photo. We're putting the finishing touches on this photo. So I go to the develop module, and I'm going to go ahead again, just do the normal workflow. You'll notice that Lightroom has already done the exposures and the highlight recovery and the shadow recoveries. If I'm not happy with anything, I can go ahead and make any adjustments. The white point, I can hold the shift key down and double click on that and adjust the white point how I want. If I want to turn around and change the white point, I can do that manually to see what I like. Okay, I can always hold the Alt key or Option key and bring in until I'm happy with the whites. Okay, same thing with the blacks. Okay, so clarity, we can always have add a little clarity, little vibrance, maybe not too much though. I don't like what that does to the noise in the sky. Then we're down to the tone curve. I like more contrast because it looks a little flat right now, and that's normal with the HDR process. It flattens the image. So let's go ahead and put a little more contour in it, a little gentle S curve right here. We'll see if we can take a stronger one. Okay, that's a little too strong for me, and I'm liking this right now. And again, you've got to turn around and just look with your eye, make these subtle adjustments here. Now this is all up to taste, what you want. Okay, sharpening, I want to put some sharpening into the area, and I really do at this point think I'm pretty close to happy to the image. Let me go ahead and zoom in here. Now we do have some noise, okay? You'll notice that we had some noise in the image here, and that's normal for HDR. So I'm going to come down to the noise reduction, and I'm going to do some noise reduction. Let's see, vignetting, defringing. What did I do with the noise reduction? Now I'm going to deal with the luminance here, and I'm just going to pull it up and watch the noise in the background. And I'm just going to pull it up until the noise pulls out. Okay? I want to make sure the noise pulls out. I don't want to overdo. Okay? I just want to pull the noise out of the picture, and that's not looking too bad. Okay? But now you can even see here that we're pulling in details inside the windows. We can see the windows frames within the picture. We can see the clouds in the sky. The arch is beautifully illuminated. The building is illuminated. The fountain, we can see details that we never saw before. So here we are with a finished HDR, and you didn't have to do any of the technical work involved in doing an HDR. You just simply select the, in this case, a 5 exposure shot. Then you told Lightroom to go ahead and create an HDR, and it did. Then we just quickly ran it through the develop module, gave it a little tone curve, little tweak here or there, and we have our final image. Okay, so it can't get any easier. Again, is this the best HDR tool on the market? Absolutely not. But if you're just getting started, okay, and you want to experiment a little bit with HDR and get your photos, okay, this is a great way to do it. So coming back to the library here, I could turn around and take this photo and then take it back to the original photo of the normal exposure. Okay, yeah, I don't know why I'm having so many problems today. Those two photos, and I'm going to put them side by side. And we can see, I'm going to zoom in here, and we can see the details that we have in the shot. We can see in the windows. We don't have the terrible ghostings. We have the details in the domes. All that is available. And I think if you look between the two, the normal exposure versus the combined HDR, we actually avoided that cartoonish look because we didn't overprocess. And we actually now have what I call a very respectable image. So what I suggest you to do, get your tripods out, set them up, do a 5 exposure, bring them into Lightroom, and have a little bit of fun. Okay, so that's it for this week. So you guys take care, and I'll talk to you next week.